Japan, a land steeped in ancient history where folktales of headless ghosts and meowing children are as common as a sushi restaurant. So much so that if a ghost or sinister spirit is found in a village, people will just pack up and leave pretty much overnight. Kicking it off at number 5, we have the Kiyotaki Tunnel. Originally part of a railway built between 1927 and 1928, the tunnel reportedly spans 444 meters in length, which is the first bad omen. The number 4 is incredibly unlucky in Japanese culture and is often linked to ill omens, bad luck, and cautionary tales. During construction, there was a number of reported fatalities of the workers who built the tunnel. They succumbed to harsh working conditions, forced into back-breaking labor, and were even reportedly executed if they stepped out of line. This has led to some pretty strange sightings from the locals, with some even warning passers-by to avoid the tunnel entirely and find an alternative route. People have reported that the tunnel changes shape while driving through it. Sometimes it's incredibly straight, other times it's a winding passage of twist and turn. One ghost, a woman dressed all in white, rumored to be the bride of an executed worker, runs from the tunnel's entrance and jumps on the bonnets of cars waiting at the traffic signals. Locals have also reported ghosts standing at the edge of the tunnel, beckoning them to enter. No thanks. Up next at number 4, we have Akiku's haunted doll. In 1918, a young boy purchased a doll while on a trip to the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. Knowing that she had a love for toys, the boy gave the doll to his little sister, Akiku, when he returned home from the trip. The pair were inseparable, and they went everywhere together. Later the next year, tragedy struck and Akiku fell gravely ill. She had contracted a severe strain of influenza and she tragically died shortly after. She was 5 years old. Her family were distraught, and to honor her memory, they placed her beloved doll beside the family altar. Here's where things get weird. A few days after they placed the doll in Akiku's memory, the family noticed that the doll's hair had mysteriously begun to grow. Originally, the doll's jet black hair had been cropped to shoulder length in the traditional Japanese style. But as the days went by, its hair began to grow longer and longer. By 1938, the family had moved from their home, but they felt compelled to keep the doll with them. You see, they were convinced that their daughter's spirit was trapped inside. To this day, the doll resides at Menenji Temple in Rito, Japan. You can actually go and see it for yourself. Even after all these years, the doll's hair continues to grow.
In at 3, the Stanley Hotel, Colorado. Now, most of you will be familiar with this hotel simply because it was the inspiration behind the best-selling novel The Shining. The hotel is located in Colorado and was built by Freeland Oscar Stanley and opened on July 4th, 1909. Now, not only did it serve as the inspiration for the Overlook Hotel, but was also the filming location for the 1997 TV miniseries, also written by King. For a long period of time, all was well at the hotel up until the publication of The Shining, which gained the Stanley Hotel a reputation as a setting for paranormal activity. However, let's go back. In 1911, a housekeeper lit a candle in a room that had a gas leak, causing an explosion that destroyed a large majority of the hotel. Now, surprisingly, the woman lived. Now, guests have claimed her spirit has unpacked their bags, even done the sheets around them while they have been sleeping. Other guests have also reported hearing piano music with no player or children's footsteps on the floor that was once a child daycare. Jumping forward to 2017, a man on a ghost tour supposedly captured 2 little girls on film despite there being no one around. Check it out. In at number 2, the Forbidden City, China. The Forbidden City is a palace complex in central Beijing that houses the Palace Museum and was the former Chinese imperial palace from the Ming Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty. It served as a home of emperors and was the ceremonial and political center for almost 500 years. Now, the palace itself is made up of 980 buildings on 180 acres of land, which is insane. Many true ghost stories have also come from within the city, spooky enough to deter any locals away. It is highly believed that the Forbidden City is haunted by the ghosts of the concubines. In 1421, Emperor Yongle ordered nearly 3,000 ladies in waiting associated with his harem to be slaughtered because he believed that a beloved concubine had been poisoned. He spared some, but on the day of his funeral, 16 courtesans were hung with nooses of white silk. Now, many who have visited the Forbidden City have reported seeing a lady with black hair running from a ghostly soldier, hear sounds of screaming, weeping, and sword fighting. Not just that, but many have seen specters of dead bodies, pools of blood, and pieces of white silk. As of right now, the Forbidden City is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is open to the public. And finally, coming in at number 1, Eastern State Penitentiary. The Eastern State Penitentiary, also known as ESP, is a former prison located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and was operational between the years of 1829 up until 1971. The prison housed notorious criminals such as Al Capone and bank robber Willie Sutton, as well as James Bruno, who was alleged to have partaken in the Clarice Massacre of 1934. Now, what makes this prison so unique is that it was the very first prison to institute solitary confinement, which ultimately led to insanity. However, it gets worse. Prisoners were also left wet in the cold until ice would form on their bodies, or even given an iron gag that made their tongues bleed. The guards and counselors over the years designed a variety of physical and psychological torture regimens for various infractions, including, like I said, dousing prisoners in freezing water outside in the winter months, as well as chaining their tongues to their wrists in a fashion such that struggling against the chains would cause their tongues to tear. They were also known to put the worst behaved prisoners into a pit called the Hole, an underground cell block dug under cell block 14, where they would have no light, no human contact, and little food for as long as 2 weeks. Now, here's where things get really spooky. In the 1900s, a locksmith was helping restore his cell when he says a negative energy overcame him and left him temporarily paralyzed before he saw visions of faces appear on the walls. Since then, countless ghost stories have appeared, with visitors reporting whispers in the walls and eerie giggles. Coming in at 5, the Tower of London. The Tower of London, officially Her Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London, is a historic castle located on the north bank of the River Thames in central London. The tower itself was initially constructed by William the Conqueror in 1078, and in its 1,000-year history, the tower has seen its fair share of murder and torture. Over the years, the tower has had many purposes: armory, prison, torture and execution room, treasury, royal residence, public records office. However, currently it holds the title as one of the most haunted places in the world. The most famous ghost is that of Anne Boleyn, one of the wives of Henry VIII, who was ultimately beheaded in the tower in 1536. Her ghost has been spotted numerous times around the tower, sometimes even carrying her own head under her arm. Another famous apparition is that of the White Lady, whose aroma wafts around the haunted place, and even English monarch Henry VI. However, a more haunting story is that of the Countess of Salisbury, a tormented ghost who refused to put her head on the scaffold when she was set to be executed in 1541. So the executioner chased her around the grounds in order to strike her down, which is what some visitors have claimed to see reenacted when seeing her ghostly apparition. Horrible. In at 4, Edinburgh Castle. Located in the capital city of Scotland, Edinburgh Castle has reportedly had human occupation on the rock it's positioned on, Castle Rock, since at least the Iron Age, which is the 2nd century AD. How crazy is that? Now, the castle itself stands upon the plug of an extinct volcano, which is estimated to have risen about 350 million years ago during the Lower Carboniferous period, with the Castle Rock being the remains of a volcanic pipe. Now, the castle itself was constructed 900 years ago as a military fortress, and legend goes that it is one of the most haunted places not just in Scotland but in the entire world. Throughout its long history, the castle has been witness to attacks, executions and murders, which has in turn led to the numerous ghost stories. Some visitors to the castle have claimed to have witnessed apparitions, including Lady Janet Douglas of Glamis, who was burned at the stakes for witchcraft, and Duke Alexander Stewart of Albany, who stabbed his guards to death and then burned their bodies. Now, while that may be creepy enough, there is more, including unnamed apparitions like a phantom piper who got lost in the castle's underground passages, a headless drummer, and even colonial prisoners from the American Revolutionary War. In 2001, a paranormal investigation even took place with 200 members of the public investigating the hidden chambers and passageways in the castle for evidence of ghosts. In at 3, Villa de Vecchi. Vecchi. Just east of Lake Como in the forested mountains of Cortanova lies a house that is said to be haunted, nicknamed the Red House, Ghost Mansion and Casa della Stray, built between 1854 to 1857 as the summer residence of Count Felix de Vecchi. However, as most creepy stories go, a few short years after its completion, the house witnessed an inexplicable string of tragedies that would forever haunt its walls. First, architect Alessandro Sodoli died a year before the villa was completed, and many would later speculate his death was the first omen. The family moved in nonetheless, and during the spring and summer months they led an idyllic and, well, brief existence. Sometime in 1862 things took a turn when the Count returned home to find his wife brutally murdered and daughter missing. He then put on a lengthy and sadly unsuccessful search for his daughter before committing suicide that same year. The villa was then passed on to Felix's brother Diego, who continued to live on the estate with his family until World War II, after which time they vacated for good. The house bounced around various owners and renters for a while until being left permanently uninhabited by the 1960s. Naturally, elements have taken over the home, but the large majority of damage has been done by humans. Graffiti covers the walls and almost everything in the house has been vandalized. However, its rumors of hauntings, ritualistic orgies and sacrifices is what leaves the home unoccupied. Spookier still, in 2002 an avalanche wiped out all of the surrounding homes in the area, all except the Villa de Vici. Now, although trespassers always return, they always leave with hauntings to report. In at 2, Los Feliz Murder Mansion. During the mid-20th century, the Los Feliz Mansion was a seemingly happy home. For a short time, that is. It housed Dr. Harold Perelson and his family until the horrific night of December 6, 1959. It was on that night that Harold struck his wife to death with a hammer, severely beating his daughter, then ended his own life using a concoction of water, acid and tranquilizer pills. Now, for the next 50 years, the murder mansion would remain completely untouched and uninhabited by anyone. 1 year after the horrific events, the home was sold to a couple, Emily and Julian Enriquez, who only used the mansion as a storage unit. Imagine being that rich. Lucky for some. Neighbors recall seeing the couple bringing boxes to the house but never staying the night. Jump forward to 1994 and Rudy Enriquez inherited the house and, like his parents, refused to stay overnight. Local residents have shared their stories of the tragic mansion, some claiming through grimy windows you can see a 1950s style television set, a Christmas tree and supposedly neatly wrapped gifts. The furniture is rumored to be covered in a thick layer of dust, and the living room remains the exact same as it was that one December night back in 1959. Now, although no one has been formally invited into the home, that hasn't stopped trespassers from having picnics in the garden, with many alleging that the house is haunted, with one trespasser stating that she was bitten by a black widow spider upon trying to break in. No one knows what prompted Dr. Perelson to murder his wife and commit suicide, with some speculating financial woes, while others have dug up old unconfirmed rumours of Dr. Perelson having been secretly hospitalised. Jump forward to 2019, what remains is an even larger mystery and a haunted home that no one can enter. And finally, coming in at number 1, Jean Harlow's house. Los Angeles seems to be the hub for paranormal activity, or perhaps it's because it's the hub for movies and everyone is a storyteller. We'll never know. Anyway, in LA you can find this Bavarian-style home in Beverly Hills, which has a truly gruesome history. In 1932 it was home to Jean Harlow and her abusive husband Paul Byrne for about 2 months before he shot himself in the head while standing in front of the mirror. Their butler discovered him and called MGM instead of the police. So of course there were a ton of rumors that it wasn't suicide, and in turn a cover-up. Prime suspect was Byrne's ex-girlfriend, a suspicion that was exasperated by her jumping off a boat a couple days after. Following the death, Jean moved out of the home but died at the age of 26 only a few years later. However, it gets creepier. In 1963, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring bought the home and lived there with Sharon Tate until she left him for Roman Polanski. They were still friends even up until they were both murdered by Charles Manson's cult. However, when Jay and Sharon lived in the Harlow house, Sharon reportedly told several friends of some strange goings on within the home. An example being once when she was sleeping in the master bedroom, she saw a creepy little man, with some of her friends stating that she believed it was the ghost of Paul Byrne. According to sources, she was so freaked out when she saw the ghost that she ran out of the room and then saw a hanging shadowy corpse with its throat slit in the hallway, which resembles quite closely how Sharon Tate was murdered. Spooky. In at 5, Dear David. On August 7th, 2017, Adam Ellis took to Twitter to tell his terrifying encounter with a ghost named David. It began on a Monday, I quote, "So my apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child and he's trying to kill me. He started appearing in dreams, but I think he's crossed over into the real world now. The first time I saw him, I was experiencing sleep paralysis and saw a child sitting in the green rocking chair at the foot of my bed. He had a huge misshapen head that was dented on one side. For a while he just stared at me, but then he got out of the chair and started shambling towards the bed. I couldn't move because I was paralysed. Right before he reached my bed, I woke up screaming. I had another dream a few nights later where I was in a library and a girl came up to me and said, 'You've seen Dear David, haven't you?' I was like, 'Who?' And she said, 'Dear David, you saw him.' She continued, 'He's dead. He only appears at midnight and you can ask him 2 questions if you said Dear David first.' Then she added, 'But never try to ask him a 3rd question, or he'll kill you.' I was very shaken. Having 2 dreams about the same thing is pretty weird. Anyway, a couple weeks passed without incident, then David came back in another dream. Same situation, I was in bed and he was sitting in the rocking chair near the window, staring at me. In the dream I say, 'Dear David, how did you die?' He mumbles, 'An accident in a store.' I say, 'Dear David, what happened in the store?' He groans. 'A shelf was pushed on my head.' I'm frozen with fear. I ask, 'Who pushed the shelf?' David doesn't answer. I realise that I've asked a 3rd question, which I'm not supposed to do. At that point I wake up absolutely terrified. The next couple of days I Google deaths in the city but can't find anything about a kid named David dying in a store. Even try different names, Daniel, Dylan, Devon, nothing. Few weeks go by without incident. Sort of randomly the apartment above mine is vacated and I have the opportunity to move into it. It's a larger apartment, so I'm thrilled. Another month or 2 goes by and I sort of forget about Dear David. I think he lost track of me because I moved upstairs. But lately something strange is happening. For the last 4 nights my cats gather at the front door at exactly midnight and just stare at it, almost like something is on the other side. And that's where I am right now. Dear David found me, I think. I don't know what to do. I'll keep you updated. And that he did. Dear David continued for over a year. The story is long but so terrifying and I wish I could read the entire thing out, but that would take hours and everyone would hate me. But we'll link it below. In at 4, Full Heart, Wet Hands. Now this story was submitted to the website My Uni Days by author Alex, who says, I quote, "So, I used to live at this address." They blacked it out. "The houses were built to house the people building the railway in Derby in the 1800s. I only found this out after I left the house, thankfully. It was a creepy house, really foreboding, and every time I washed my hair in the shower, every time I opened my eyes, I expected something to be there. Anyway, I came back from an afternoon lecture. I opened the door, walked up the first flight of stairs and saw a wet handprint on the floor. A really wet handprint. I was a bit like, very strange. At that moment, but I didn't freak out. It was just out of the ordinary. So I walked up to see my housemate, Ed. I opened the door and he was on the phone to his girlfriend. Not crying, but massively in distress. That was when the penny dropped. He then told me that as he was walking up the stairs earlier carrying a glass of water, he felt something cold go through him, almost a push, causing him to drop the water. He picked up the glass and ran up the stairs to his room. The water falling out the glass had created a handprint on the floor. Literally a handprint. Every digit was in proportion. I did freak out at this moment as I'd put the 2 and 2 together. I told everyone to get out of the house, which we did, but then sheepishly returned after a FIFA session around another friend's house. It was genuinely terrifying. Might not sound it, but it was. And all true. If someone offered me $50 to go back and spend the night there by myself, despite the fact that I lived there for a year without almost no incident, I wouldn't. There was something there that didn't want 6 college guys there. This is truly terrifying and I likely would have done the same thing. Run. Something was clearly lingering in the home that wasn't at ease. Now the handprint has the potential of making, but the sensation of a person pushing you, now that is something else entirely. No thank you. Also, you'd have to pay me more than $50 to go back. Coming in at 3, please stop moving the kitchen table. Uploaded to My Uni Days by a user named Barbara, this story tells the haunting tale of ghosts that just won't stop messing with the kitchen table. I quote, "My house was fraught with weird stuff happening when we first moved in. The kitchen table would move overnight 12 to 18 inches. My keys will disappear and show up in the weirdest places like my quilt trunk." I don't know who has a cool trunk these days, but this person does. My son Christopher went into the basement and things came flying off the shelf at him. He also saw someone walking on our wraparound porch once, but no one was there. The most obvious one was a few years ago. Twice this happened. I was sweeping the kitchen floor. The door to the porch started shaking uncontrollably. It was like someone was trying to open the door without turning the knob. It lasted about 15 seconds. Keep in mind this is a wraparound porch completely enclosed. I knew it was bad because my dogs, who will bark at a butterfly flying past the window, all looked up at the door and stepped back. Both times it happened, I was doing the same thing about the same time at night. By the way, as a side note, I walked into the kitchen table one night while going to the bathroom. It was not the first time I walked into the kitchen table because it was moved. So I just said, please stop moving the kitchen table, and it never moved again. Spooky stuff. Do you believe Barbara's story? And if so, who do you think the ghost was? Former resident of the home perhaps, or just someone who was obsessed with moving kitchen tables? Perhaps a former interior designer? You never know. You don't know the story. Coming in at number 2, Demon in the Dark. Another creepy ghost story uploaded to my uni days. This one comes from a guy named Dave, who explains his very real encounter with a scary demon. My family travelled to the south of France to stay in a cottage owned by someone my dad worked with. The owners visited occasionally, but that summer it was free and we had 10 days booked in there. After a long 2 days on the road, we drove down a steep driveway towards a secluded mill cottage, with the water wheel sat static alongside the stone house. There was a deep cellar with stone stairs down under the wheel next to the house, and a small river circled the place. We went into the house and chose rooms, but being set down in small copes, the house was a draft and cold from lack of use. And we settled in and turned all of the heating on, yet the house remained cold and felt damp. The first night we had set a fire in the living room and listened to a couple of my audiobooks before my sister and I went to sleep. My parents stayed up a little longer than went to bed. Around midnight they both woke up at exactly the same time, and the door to their bedroom was opening slowly. At first they thought it was my sister, until they saw a large dark silhouette of a man framed in the doorway, standing stock still, just looking in their direction as if appraising them. After a short period the shape turned and started to move as if satisfied, and disappeared completely. They looked at each other but didn't speak, and both went back to sleep. The next morning the house felt warm and dry, and sunlight was back through the windows as if something had lifted and accepted them. They spoke the next day and both agreed that although they were skeptics, it could not have been anything other than something supernatural in that doorway, deciding their worth. What do you guys think about that one? Demon encounter? Intruder? Or just trick of the light? Do you think there was a man there, or is this all pretend? You tell me. I think it was just an old house that took a little while to heat up. But that's not very scary, is it? And finally, coming in at number 1, Hotel Cecil. Of course, there is no building more haunted than the Cecil Hotel that has numerous unexplained deaths and hauntings that are still ongoing today, even after it changed its name to Stay on Main. Creepier still, there's an entire list of suicides reported on its Wikipedia page, with the first reported case happening in 1931, followed by a long string of similar deaths in 1932, 1934, 1937, 1938, 1939 and 1940. The 30s were not a good time for the Cecil, that's for sure. During the same time, other tenants of the building also died by suicide, and one man was pinned to the exterior wall by a truck. In 1962, a woman jumped from the 9th floor window and landed on a pedestrian, killing them both. In 1964, tenant Goldie Osgood was brutally murdered, which had remained unsolved. And of course, one of the most famous cases is that of Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old traveller who was found dead in the rooftop water tank of the hotel after guests began to complain of a funky taste. Now, with this number, it isn't so much the ghosts themselves that are the unsolved haunting, but the hotel itself, which seems to curse anyone who stays in it or near it. Coming in at 5, Hotel Monte Vista, Arizona. Hotel Monte Vista is a famous and historic hotel located 1 block north of US Route 66 in Flagstaff, Arizona. The hotel was built back in 1927 and is a centerpiece of the historic downtown district. However, it's become more popular for the otherworldly goings on inside its walls. Guests who have stayed in room 220 have experienced the TV changing channels on its own, and some even said they have felt cold hands touching them while they slept. However, arguably the most popular ghost story to emerge from the hotel is that of the phantom bellboy, who is said to knock on doors and announce room service, but when guests open their doors, no one's there. Another popular haunting, and perhaps one of the most disturbing, is the sound of an infant crying in the basement. I quote, "Staff have found themselves running upstairs to escape the sound of the cries. Though the sounds are very real to those who hear them, there's been no information that has explained the phenomenon." That is a direct quote from the hotel's website. Spooky. Would you dare stay there? Coming in at 4, Ariana Grande's haunting. Now, we have a Hollywood ghost story at this number, coming from the mouth of none other than Ariana Grande. Yep, that's right. Ariana Grande was supposedly haunted by a ghost back in 2013 when she visited Stull Cemetery in Kansas, a place that is supposedly so scary the Pope refuses to fly over it because it's reputed to be one of the 7 gates to hell. Yeah. Ariana explained to Complex, I quote, "I felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur, which is the sign of a demon, and there was a fly in the car, randomly, which is another sign of a demon." That sounds like a stretch to me. "I was like, this is scary, let's leave. I rolled down the window before we left and said, we apologize, we didn't mean to disrupt your peace. Then I took a picture, and there are 3 super distinct faces in the picture. They are faces of textbook demons." Now the story gets even creepier, stick with me. According to Ariana, when she tried to send the picture to her manager the next day, she was met with an error message that read, "This file can't be sent. It's 666 megabytes. Weird things began to occur following the incident, and Ariana was forced to delete the picture. I quote, "I was going to sleep about 2 weeks ago. I had just gotten off the phone, and as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard this really loud rumble right next to my head. When I opened my eyes, it stopped immediately, but when I closed my eyes, it started again with whispers. Every time I closed my eyes, I started seeing these really disturbing images with red shapes. Then I opened my eyes and scooched over to the left side of my bed, and there was this massive black matter. I don't know what it was. It was like a cloud of something black right next to me. I started crying. I watched it move to the front of my bed, and then I fell asleep. I woke up and it was gone." Now, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to believe this one without the evidence to back it up, but if Ariana says it happened, then I guess it happened.
Next up at number 3, we have the bizarre story of the Round Schoolhouse. Rumoured to have been built in 1906 in the rural town of Bibay, this strange structure was given its nickname from locals due to its distinctive round shape. Between the 1940s and 70s, the building was used as an elementary school, but one day, mysteriously and abruptly, they closed their doors sometime in 1971. Here's the kicker. Not even the locals know why. It was left to fall into ruin, but rather creepily, tables and desks still remain there, gathering dust, perhaps waiting for students that will never come back. In fact, the Round Schoolhouse has been so forgotten that the only way to access the site is on foot through a nearby forest. Even the roads leading up to the school have disappeared into memory. Through the late 70s and 80s, the building was a hotbed for paranormal activity. By all accounts, it was infested by spirits. The location has become so infamous that brave Japanese YouTubers have tried to document the location. More sinister rumors have led to people completely disappearing, abandoned cars found in the nearby town, stories of friends that had gone missing after wanting to grab some footage from the Round Schoolhouse site. You've been warned. Stay far, far away. Bringing it in at number 2, we have the terrifying tale of Japanese ghost taxis. After the Great Eastern Earthquake that tragically hit Japan in 2011, a strange series of witness accounts began to crop up all over the island nation. In areas badly hit by the Delhi tsunami, stories of ghost taxis began to rapidly circulate. Many of these stories were even picked up by Western news outlets, perplexing people as to their origin. However, these stories are hardly new. The people of Tokyo have been warning travelers of spectral passengers since the days of the rickshaw. The most famous of these reports come from a taxi driver who was passing by a cemetery. There, he found a young woman dressed in all black, caught in the pouring rain. She flagged the driver down and in a sad voice asked the driver to take her to an address. When they arrived, she asked if they could just linger around for a few minutes. In the house beside them was the silhouette of a young man staring out of his window. And after 5 minutes of silence, the woman asked the driver just to take her home. When they arrived, the driver turned around to collect his fare, but the woman was just gone. Only a puddle of rainwater remained where she had been sitting.